Welcome trainers! In Arkansas PVP, we like to have a day 1 cup for every themed cup in the Silph Arena. So for today's video, I'm bringing you our day 1 Voyager Cup where I tied 4-1 for first place. Initially, I really wasn't planning on participating in this tournament since I didn't really look at Voyager Cup a whole lot. I had taken a look at the meta on PVPoke and ran the team builder a few times, but I still wasn't solidified on what my final team was going to be. I also really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to participate in the tournament, so about 20 minutes out, I realized that I would be able to commit, and so I created a team at the very last minute. With less than 20 minutes to register and create a team, I did what any good battler would do. I pulled up the stats on PVPoke and wanted to check what everyone else was running. Upon looking at the stats, I realized that the most frequently used Pokemon were very Go Battle League-esque, and I decided on Azumarill, Registeel, and Alola Marowak to form the core of my team. In order to help round out my coverage, I went with Hypno for sort of my anti-meta Kanto pick, Toxicroak as my counter user Sinnoh pick, and Shiftry as my grass user for my wildcard pick. Now mind you, even though I've never practiced with this specific team before, these are all Pokemon that I've used very extensively in the past, and so I'm very comfortable using all of these Pokemon as my team for this day 1 Voyager Cup. One factor I didn't take into account when making my team was that competitors might potentially be running Stunfisk. If you also went against a Stunfisk without knowing nothing about him, you realize that he's super spammy and he throws ground and electric type charge moves. When you look over my team, you realize that basically all of my team is super weak to Stunfisk with the exception of Shiftry as my only hard counter. With all of that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and get into the video. One of my goals with this video is to keep things moving a little bit quicker than the last one, since the last video was over 50 minutes long. With all of that in mind, I'm really glad I decided to do this day 1 Voyager Cup considering I hadn't really practiced a whole lot or solidified a team. Having said that, I think going forward I'm going to try to incorporate some more off-meta or spicy picks, if you will, due to the fact that if your team is too meta, it is way too easy to counter, and if your team is too off-meta, you probably won't have great coverage. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into round 1 of the Arkansas PVP Day 1 Voyager Cup. In round 1, I'm up against Mr. Sexy Eric. Now against Eric's team, I noticed that Azumarill would be really strong with the exception of the Shiftry matchup and also the Toxicroak matchup as well, especially if he's able to shield bait. With Azumarill in mind, I want to make sure I have supporting Pokemon for Azumarill in the back, and so I decided to bring Alola and Marowak as a safe swap along with Toxicroak in the back. We head into game 1 and right off the bat, I win the lead. So at this point, I realize he's not swapping out, and so I decide to farm as much energy as I can, and I prepare for the swap. Now he switches in his own Medicham, and I'm waiting to time this swap so that the charge move will land on my Alola Marowak. Now at this point, I'm not ready to commit a shield because I don't know if he's running Psychic, Dynamic Punch, Ice Punch, and as you can see, it's a Dynamic Punch. So I continue farming him up. I'm trying to get as much energy as I can, and he throws another charge move. Just like the first charge move, I know this is not a Psychic, it ends up being an Ice Punch, and so it's a good thing I did not shield. So I'm trying to overfarm just a little bit before I throw the Shadow Ball. At this point in the game, I don't expect him to commit a shield. This is a losing matchup for him, and he probably wants to save his shield for what he has in the back. He comes back out with his own Alola Marowak, and his Alola Marowak does have an energy lead. So I play it safe, and I decide to shield this first charge move. And it ends up just being a Bone Club, which is perfectly fine with me. But as you can see, he got to another one, and I'm prepared to let it go, but it turns out to just be a Bone Club. Now, after seeing me commit a shield, it's very likely that he's going to shield this Bone Club, and so I decide to throw Bone Club so that I have energy stored on my Alola Marowak before I swap out. Once I bring in my Azumarill, at this point, I'm not prepared to commit any shields to this matchup, but I decide to throw one Ice Beam because I want to get him low enough so that he's farmable, but I don't necessarily want to waste all of my energy because I don't know what he has in the back. He throws his charge move, and at this point, like I said, I'm not ready to commit a shield. Even if it's a Shadow Ball, I could totally eat a Shadow Ball. So with just one Pokemon left in the back, he comes out, and it turns out to be his Skarmory. I know if I throw 2 Hydro Pumps, I could get him pretty low, but it won't be enough to take him out, especially since he has one shield for one of those Hydro Pumps. So the first Hydro Pump goes off, and he shields it, rightfully, and then he gets ready and he throws the Sky Attack. And at this point, I am going to commit my last shield to this Azumarill so that I can get the Hydro Pump off. But I know if I don't play this out correctly, I could still potentially lose, especially since I have Toxicroak in the back. So I get this last Hydro Pump off, and then I'm getting ready to switch into Toxicroak as a sacrificial swap and catch the Sky Attack. Now that Toxicroak caught that last Sky Attack, I could just send out my Alola Marowak and finish this off with just fast attacks alone. And that's a GG's game 1. As we head into game 2, I decide to make a slight adjustment to my lineup, and instead of bringing Toxicroak, I decide to bring Registeel instead. The rest of my lineup is going to stay exactly the same. Now heading into game 2, I lead my Azumarill into his Skarmory. Now this is a winning matchup for me, and so I decide to stay in. Now at this point, I'm thinking about swapping since I do have 2 very good counters to Skarmory in the back as well. But for some reason, I think this was a mistake on my part. I decide to throw an Ice Beam instead of going straight Hydro Pump, and he decides not to shield. Now at this point, I threw a Registeel in hopes of catching a charge move, but instead he makes a swap into his own Alola Marowak. Now, this matchup is a super hard loss for me, so at this point, I'm not prepared to commit any shield. I'm really just looking to get off as many Flash Cannons as I can before fainting. It's playing out, I'm getting farmed. Here comes the Bone Club. And like I said, I'm not prepared to shield any of these Bone Clubs. I honestly just want Registeel out of there as quickly as possible. I get off this next Flash Cannon, and this is enough to take him pretty low, especially because he doesn't shield. Now I think he got nervous here because he decided to throw one final Bone Club, but he could have taken me out with just fast attacks alone. So now he actually wasted a decent amount of energy, and I'm prepared to send in my Azumarill to farm up the rest of this Alola Marowak's HP. He throws a charge move, and I know it's going to be a Shadow Ball, but I ultimately made the decision not to shield because I don't know what he has in the back. He could have a harder counter. Skarmory also probably has a charge move ready, and so I decide not to shield. He throws out his Skarmory and he beats me to the charge move, and at this point I definitely want to keep my Azumarill alive. So I throw the shield, I throw the Ice Beam, and I'm really hoping he's going to shield this at this point, especially since he still has 2 shields, and he does. I switch out my Alola Marowak to start building up energy, and he decides to stay in. He gets to the Sky Attack, and without me knowing what he has in the back, I decide not to shield. The Sky Attack connects, and then at this point, I'm just farming as much energy as I can, and I want to see what he has in the back, and it turns out to be Shiftry. Now, this is a huge problem for me, because these Snarls are going to they're going to hurt my Alola Marowak really, really bad. And I throw the Bone Club to take his last shield, and at this point, I realize that I probably... even though both of these moves aren't going to do very much damage, I probably should have gone for the Shadow Ball since I would have been able to get to it before fainting. He really aggressively fars me at this point, and once my Azumarill comes out, the first Leaf Blade is ready, and I have a shield ready for it. But as you can see here in a second, he farmed me so aggressively that he had the second Leaf Blade ready, and that's all it's going to take me out at this point, so that's a GG's game 2. Heading into the last match, I decide to go back to my game 1 lineup. I think he realized that his Shiftry put in really good work against my team, and so I'm expecting him to bring it again, and as a response, I decide to bring my Toxicroak in the back as a hard counter to that Shiftry. Heading into game 3, I lead Azumarill into his Wigglytuff. Now, I don't really want to sit this, I don't want to play this matchup out, so I decide to switch in my Alola Marowak, and he's a little bit slow to the switch here, but he decides to respond with his own Alola Marowak. Now at this point I have a really massive energy advantage, and so I decide my strategy for this matchup is to go straight Shadow Ball since I know I can get to 2 of them and commit just a single shield. Now he shields that first Shadow Ball, and for the second Shadow Ball we actually CMP tie. Now it's possible he's baiting me, but I decide to commit a shield anyway just to play it safe, and it turns out just to be a Bone Club. Now with this second Shadow Ball he could essentially not shield it and give up AWAC, or he could shield it, which he does, and go Shadow Ball to finish me off. Now at this point, Alola Marowak, his job is done. He took both of his shields, and I have my Azumarill to farm up his Alola Marowak at this point. Now once my Azumarill comes out against his Alola Marowak, I don't really want to shield any of his charge moves, even if it's a Shadow Ball. I don't really know what he has in the back. I know he has Wigglytuff, but I don't know what else he has, and so with the shield advantage, I really want to maintain that, and at this point I count at 3 final fast attacks before I throw out my Ice Beam. I really don't want to get hit by even a Bone Club at this point. I'm just trying to finish him off and have tons of stored energy. So at this point, I don't know what he has in the back. He's thinking about what to send out, and I'm waiting, and at this point he comes out with his own Shiftry, and I go straight Ice Beam. Now this isn't going to take him out, but it's going to put him really low, and so my strat here is to send out my Toxicroak and finish him off with just counters before he even gets a charge attack off. Now his final Mon comes out and it's Wiggly, and at this point, you know, typically this is a losing matchup, but because of the fact that he has no shields, I can go straight Sludge Bomb, and this Sludge Bomb is all it's going to take to finish him off. And that is going to be a GG's for game 3. GG's Mr. Sexy Eric. New day of recording, and for round 2, I'm up against Odin. Now, Odin is actually a regular in Arkansas PVP. He's been a member for quite some time now, and we battled in many tournaments at this point. With Odin's lineup, I noticed that half of our teams are exactly the same, and I noticed that the only hard counter he has for Azumarill is Meganium, so I decided I want to bring in Azumarill for sure. Now at this point in the tournament, I'm really itching to bring Hypno into a match, so I bring Hypno as well, and I bring Alola Marowak to support my team. Unfortunately for this matchup, I ran out of storage on my phone during our final round, so I only have about the first 45 seconds or a minute of footage for that round. We'll get to that battle when we get there. I don't want to spoil the results, but let's go ahead and jump into match 1. Heading into game 1, I lead Azumarill into his Meganium, and this is not a matchup I want to stay in. So I immediately switch to my Alola Marowak, and he matches my switch and switches to his Azumarill. Now, at this point, I feel like it's already GG's, just because he had my line countered so well. But my strat for now is just going to be going straight Shadow Ball. And I get really close to this second Shadow Ball against this Azumarill, and I'm contemplating whether I want to shield, and I ultimately decide not to. I figure that the first Shadow Ball went through, and so I could use this Azumarill to farm up energy on my Azumarill. Now at this point in the game, he threw a Hydro Pump, but I don't know what his second charge move is going to be, so I'm waiting to see what he throws. You know, the recommended moveset is Ice Beam and Hydro Pump, but it's possible he has Play Rough, and because of the fact that he does have Play Rough, that means he's going to win this mirror match. And so I'm farming up energy, and then I decide to throw my Hypno in so I can start building up energy with my Hypno. Now, he throws a charge move, and I decide to shield it up because my Hypno is like very healthy, and I want to use this Hypno to its fullest potential, but he sends out Registeel. Now at this point in the game, I realize it's definitely GG's. I decide to let the charge move go through because, you know, this is a losing matchup for me. And so I get to this first Shadow Ball, and at this point, you know, he's up in shield, so I'm just wondering if he's going to shield or not. And he decides to shield. So now I have, you know, it's equal shield situation, and I'm just wondering if I get to the second Shadow Ball, and I do. Now at this point, because of the fact that he has Meganium in the back, I'm not expecting him to commit a second shield. He really wants to protect that Meganium from Ice Beam. He throws off the charge move, and I am, you know, at this point it's definitely GG's for me, but I'm just thinking, you know, how can I possibly play this out? So I'm trying to get as much energy as I can on my Azumarill, and I decide to throw the Ice Beam. I'm really hoping that he's going to commit his last shield here so that there's a slight sliver of a chance that I can still win, and he does. So I'm really just trying to get as much energy as I can off of his Registeel at this point. He throws a charge move. I decide to let it go through because I know he has Meganium in the back with a ton of stored energy. He makes a swap into Azumarill, and I can't afford to take any more damage, so I throw the Ice Beam right away. It doesn't take him out, it takes him low. And at this point, I am just too... my Azumarill is too low in HP to do anything. You know, he sends out his Registeel, and I'm trying to get as much energy as I can, but it's too late for me, and that's a GG's game 1. We head into game 2, and I switch up my line. This time I bring Registeel with Toxicroak and Alola Marowak. Now I lead Registeel into his Bastiodon, and I decide I want to go straight Focus Blast before I swap out. Now I throw this Focus Blast, and I'm thinking, you know, he's about to get to a charge move, so let me go ahead and swap in my Toxicroak. That way I can eat this charge move. You know, no matter what he throws, Toxicroak is going to be able to handle this charge move just fine, and that way I can preserve my Registeel. Now he was forced to shield that Focus Blast, and he decides to send in Meganium. And because of the fact that I'm able to beat him to the charge move and get a Sludge Bomb off, he either is going to commit his last shield or take some serious damage, and he decides to commit his last shield. Now, mind you, at this point, I have Alola Marowak in the back, and so my strategy at this point is to send in my Alola Marowak, and because of the fact that I still have 2 shields left, I am definitely going to commit 1 shield to protect my Alola Marowak against this Earthquake, and leave this matchup with a ton of stored energy. So I shield up the Earthquake, and at this point, I know I can fate him down before he's able to get to another Earthquake. And I'm just thinking, he's probably not going to send out Bastiodon, but I'm just wondering what he has in the back. So I'm waiting, and he finally switches in, and it turns out to be his Azumarill. Now, because of the fact that shields are down, I want to go ahead and throw this Shadow Ball right away. And I'm thinking about switching out to my Registeel so I can start building up energy. Now, I switched to Registeel and he decides to switch to his Bastiodon. Now, I think this was a mistake on his part because with shields down, this Focus Blast is just going to one-shot Bastiodon. And at this point, you know, with Azumarill, he's running Hydro Pump and Play Rough. He would need to get to 3 Hydro Pumps to feint my Registeel, burn my shield, and then feint my Alola Marowak. So I realized if I just commit my last shield right here, I'll be able to get to 2 Flash Cannons before he's even able to get to another Hydro Pump. So he eats that first Flash Cannon. It doesn't feint him, but it takes him super, super low. And I still have stored energy on my Alola Marowak, so I realized, you know, even if he did get to the Hydro Pump, it would be GG's at this point. And I get off that second Flash Cannon, and that's enough to finish off round 2. GG's. Heading into game 3, I lead Alola Marowak into the mirror match. Now, this is a very bait-dependent matchup unless you both decide to go straight Shadow Ball, and then it comes down to who commits shields. So for the first charge move, I decide I want to bait. Now, unfortunately for me, the bait does not work. He doesn't buy it, and of course it's a CMP tie. And so I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if he's baiting. Let me play it safe and go ahead and shield. And luckily for me, it's a Shadow Ball. So I have the energy advantage at this point. And I decide, since I baited the first charge move, I'm going to double commit to the, you know, double bait. And luckily for me, he decides to shield. So at this point in the matchup, I am up in we're equal shields and I'm up in terms of energy. And right there is when I ran out of storage. So essentially the way that game played out is it came down to me having Registeel in the back, and he decided to bring Wigglytuff. And because of the fact that Registeel dominates that Wigglytuff matchup, the Flash Cannons were able to finish him off, and I was able to win game 3 for a GG's against Odin. GG's Odin. In round 3, I'm up against Jay Will Go Fast. With Jay's lineup, I noticed that he's running a sort of, you know, Lantern Whiscash combination, so a double weakness to grass, and he's also running double grass on top of it. So I decide for this matchup, I want to lead with my Shiftry. I want to bring Toxicroak as sort of a supporting Pokemon, and then I'm going to bring Azumarill since Azumarill is really tanky and hasn't done me wrong so far. Heading into game 1, I lead Shiftry into his Whiscash, and this is a winning matchup for me. Now, initially, I made the mistake of not counting fast moves, and so I decided to commit my first move here thinking it might be a Blizzard, but obviously, you know, he didn't get enough fast attacks off to get to a Blizzard. So I get to my Leaf Blade, and I'm expecting a shield at this point, otherwise Whiscash is absolute toast. And he caught the Leaf Blade with his Shiftry, so that was an awesome swap. Now at this point, I switch in my Toxicroak, and I'm not going to commit a shield here because I know this Leaf Blade won't take me out. And I know that I'll be able to leave this matchup with a ton of stored energy. Now at this point, I'm expecting him to send out Whiscash. I'm waiting. And he decides to send in his Lantern. So at this point, I realize that my Shiftry is probably going to be able to handle both of these Pokemon if I save my last shield for Shiftry. So because of the fact I have a ton of stored energy, I'm able to get 2 Mud Bombs off against his Lantern, and these Mud Bombs hurt Lantern so bad. He decides to commit a shield, and it was a CMP tie there. So as I said, I want to commit my last shield to Lantern. Toxicroak did his job, and at this point, all I need to do is send out my Shiftry, build up energy because he just got to that Thunderbolt, so I'm able to farm just a little bit. And I throw this last Leaf Blade, and I'm not expecting him to shield at this point, and he does not. He comes back out with his Whiscash. I have the Leaf Blade ready, and he only has 1 more shield. So at this point, he has no choice but to shield this Leaf Blade. And he throws another charge move, and I realized that it was just going to be a Mud Bomb yet again, so I decided not to shield. And I get to that final Leaf Blade, and this Leaf Blade is all what it's going to take to finish off this Whiscash. Bringing Shiftry was definitely a good choice against this team, especially since he brought his double weakness to grass. GG's game 1. We head into game 2, and this time I lead Shiftry into his Alolan Marowak. Now this is not a good matchup for me, so I throw off a couple of fast attacks before I switch off into my Azumarill. Now at this point, I don't want to commit any shields because I know this is just going to be a bone club and Azumarill can take the bone club just fine. Now I'm expecting a swap, but he's very slow to this switch. And I'm just farming, and at this point he sends in his Bastiodon. And so I realize at this point that I can go straight Hydro Pump and likely get to 2 Hydro Pumps. Now luckily for me, he decided to commit his first shield right there. And he throws a charge move. And I know no matter what charge move this is, I can absolutely tank it. So I let the charge move go through, and it's just a flamethrower. And so my Azumarill has a lot of HP. I get to the second Hydro Pump, and this is kind of a make it or break it moment for this matchup. I want to see if he's going to commit his shield, and he does not. And so the Twitch timer is ready, and I send out my Toxicroak to finish off Bastiodon with just counters before he's able to get another charge move off, which is really good for me. Now at this point, he sends in his Whiscash, and this is a losing matchup for me. I know this Mud Bomb isn't going to take me out, and I'll still be able to get to a charge move, so I let it go through, and I get to my Sludge Bomb, which is just going to help me do some chip damage to this Whiscash. And I'm not expecting a shield because Sludge Bomb is going to be resisted. It's not going to do very much damage at all, and he's able to finish me off with fast attacks. Now at this point, I really want to send out my Shiftry and start building up energy. So I do that, and he immediately switches out into his Alolan Marowak. And with 2 shields in the bank, I decide to commit my first shield here to help protect my Shiftry, because I know if I can keep Shiftry in the back against this Whiscash, that it's just going to be an easy win for me. So I throw Foul Play, he commits his last shield, and I send out Azumarill to do some chip damage to Alolan Marowak. That way I can get him farmable for my Shiftry. Now at this point, I send in Shiftry yet again, and my goal here is to aggressively farm down Alolan Marowak. And I decide to commit my last shield because at this point I have enough energy for a Leaf Blade, and with Whiscash in the back and no shields, I know Shiftry's attack stat is high enough where he's going to win the CMP tie even if he has a charge move ready. And because of the fact that he doesn't have a shield and I'm able to get to that Leaf Blade and I win CMP, I'm able to finish it off, and that is a GG's for game 2. In game 3, I switch things up and leave Toxicroak into his Alolan Marowak. Now, I was thinking about swapping initially, but I decided to go straight Mud Bomb because I'm curious to see whether he's going to shield this Mud Bomb or not. I don't know how, I don't know what he has in the back, and so he doesn't shield the first Mud Bomb. Now, that tells me that I kind of want to protect my Toxicroak, and so I decide to commit my first shield before switching to Azumarill. Now, he makes a very quick switch into his own Shiftry, and at this point, I know Azumarill is toast no matter what. Luckily for me, I'm able to get to this Ice Beam, and he does decide to shield. Now, I know that this Leaf Blade is not going to take me out, so I decide to let it go through. And at this point, it's a question of whether he wants to aggressively farm me or whether he's going to do what he just did and immediately throw the Leaf Blade. So he immediately throws the Leaf Blade. He has no energy on his Shiftry, and I decide, Azumarill, you're done for. I set out my Toxicroak, and I know I can really aggressively farm the heck out of this Shiftry. I know the Leaf Blade isn't going to take me out, so I decide not to commit the shield, and I still don't know what he has in the back at this point. So I have a ton of stored energy after this Shiftry matchup. I'm ready for whatever comes out, and it turns out to be his Whiscash. So I throw the Sludge Bomb. I'm not expecting a shield. This isn't going to do a whole lot, but I'm getting ready to immediately switch into my Shiftry. I make the switch, and he throws the charge move against my Shiftry here, and I decide that I want to commit my last shield right here because I know that no matter what charge moves Alolan Marowak throws, they're not going to take me out. Now with his Alolan Marowak so low, I decide to go straight Leaf Blade since it would take him out at this point. And it turns out that he committed his last shield here, which means that as long as I can land a Leaf Blade on his Whiscash, it is definitely GG's. He throws a Shadow Ball. I get one more Snarl off, and I throw the Leaf Blade. Now at this point, I'm just thinking, as long as I can get to one Leaf Blade, I can finish this. And luckily for me, I was one fast attack off. He didn't have a charge move ready, and I'm able to get to this very last Leaf Blade to finish off his Whiscash with shields down for a GG's in game 3. GG's, Jay will go fast. In round 4, I'm up against the Real PR, better known to me as Ricky. Now, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Ricky. Ricky and I typically go against each other in all of our mega tournaments. Him and I are actually sitting at the top of our leaderboard, and we are neck and neck in terms of win percentage for our tournaments. Now, Ricky's team is especially problematic for my team because my one counter for his little pancake fish is Shiftry, and he also brought Togekiss, which is going to demolish my Shiftry. Now, since he is bringing the pancake fish, I decide to bring Shiftry to cover it, and I also decide to bring Registeel to cover that Togekiss weakness. Additionally, I decide to bring Toxicroak to cover his double dark setup that he has going on with his team. We head into game 1, and I lead Shiftry into his Umbreon. Now, this is unfortunate for me because I was really hoping to catch the Stunfish. I don't really know if it's typically a lead or not. So I make the swap here into Registeel to catch this charge move. I have a ton of stored energy on my Shiftry, and I catch the Foul Play, which is great for me. Now, it's at this point that he sends out the pancake, and I'm thinking, oh man, this thing is even spammier than I was told. So he immediately gets the charge move off, and I know this is like a terribly losing matchup for me. I'm not even sure if I should be throwing Focus Blast or Flash Cannons. I decide to throw Focus Blast, and as you can see, it really doesn't, I mean, it takes out about, 45% of his health, but it's really not a whole lot. And I get to the Flash Cannon, and it's a CMP tie. Since this is a losing matchup, I decide, you're done, Registeel. I send out my Shiftry at this point because I know I can keep farming him up just a little bit, and I know no matter which charge move he throws, whether it's Discharge or Mud Bomb, that my Shiftry will be able to tank it just fine. So I do a little bit of aggressive farming, and I decide to throw my Leaf Blade. Now at this point, I know he has Umbreon, but I don't know what he has in the back. And so at this point, I'm really scared that he has Togekiss, and he's contemplating the switch here, so I'm like, maybe he doesn't. But he does. And because of the fact that he has Togekiss and I have Toxicroak in the back, it really doesn't matter what I do at this point. These charms are going to demolish my team. Now, I wasn't sure if I would be able to get to more than one charge move, so I go for the Mud Bomb bait here. And of course, I expect him to shield. And I'm just thinking, can I get to one more? No, those charms demolish me. And of course, with Shiftry here, I am, 1 HP away from death. So I know at this point, it is GG's, and I die with 2 shields in the bank for a GG's game 1. We head into game 2, and I lead Toxicroak into his Pancake Fish. Now, this is bad news for me because I did not bring Shiftry for some reason. So I send out my Azumarill, and I was really hoping to catch the Mud Bomb, but he was totally ready for that switch, and so I get hit with a Discharge. Now I decide not to shield because this is a losing matchup for me, and I know Discharge is not going to take me out. I could take a couple of them before fainting. My goal at this point is to get as many Ice Beams off as I can and to take as much HP as I can, and he decided to shield that first Ice Beam. Now this is good news for me because it's setting me up for a shield advantage. And at this point, I'm thinking I might be able to get to one more Ice Beam, and nah, the Pancake is way too spammy, and so he's able to get to one last Discharge to take me out. The Azumarill took a shield, and I'm happy for that. I come back out with my Toxicroak, and my goal at this point is to commit 1 shield and farm as much energy as I can off of his Pancake. Now he throws the charge move, I shield it up, and I'm contemplating whether I'll be able to aggressively farm or not, and I realize no. He is way too spammy for that. I need to throw this Mud Bomb, and please do not shield. Luckily for me, he does not shield, and at this point, I had a Sludge Bomb ready, and I should have thrown it against Togekiss. That was mistake number 1 for me in this matchup. If I had thrown it, I could have potentially left him without a shield at this point, and Registeel against both Scrafty and Togekiss would have been a win for me. So I threw the Focus Blast, and he committed it to his Scrafty, which is the right choice, and at this point he's just going to go straight power-up punches, and this is a terrible situation for me with Togekiss in the back. Now, this is a mistake number 2 I made during this matchup, is that I thought if I shielded the second power-up punch, that I would be able to get to the Focus Blast and take him out. Unfortunately for me, it was ready, but I was not able to get the charge move off, and at this point I have no choice but to send off this Sludge Bomb against Scrafty, which is not going to take him out, and additionally I'm wasting all of my energy, and once this Togekiss comes out, I am just 1 or 2 charms away from fainting, and that is a GG's for game 2. We head into the final match, and this time I win the lead. I lead Toxicroak into his Umbreon, and I'm thinking, great, let me build up some energy. I don't necessarily want to sit in this matchup. I might need my Toxicroak later on, so I decide to send out my Azumarill, and I eat whatever charge move this is. I don't know what it is. It turns out to be a last resort, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. He sends out the Stunfish, and I'm thinking, oh god, not this pancake again. And similar to the last game, I don't really want to shield. It's a losing matchup no matter what. Let me just, throw these Ice Beams, hopefully take some shields along the way, and we'll see what happens. So I throw Ice Beam, he shields it up, and I'm, hoping I can get to the next Ice Beam, but of course, he's way too spammy for that. So I decide to let Azumarill go, and I'm like, okay, Toxicroak has a ton of stored energy. Let me send out my Toxicroak. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that he will not shield this, right? I still have 2 shields. I'm thinking if he lets this Mud Bomb go through, I could commit 1 shield and then very, very aggressively farm the little bit of HP he has left before fainting. Hopefully. So he doesn't shield, and I'm thinking, come on, I got this. And luckily for me, I was able to aggressively farm. Now this is a great situation for me. I don't know what he has in the back. I'm still waiting. I know he has Umbreon. I'm thinking, what is it? And the rest of this matchup is really janky because for some reason, I sent out my Registeel against Swampert. Now this is a losing matchup for me. I really don't know why I made that swap. And I'm thinking, okay, what am I doing? And so, I'm letting these Hydro Cannons go through. I'm like thinking, what am I doing with my life right now? And for some reason, he sends out his Umbreon. And even crazier, I send out this Focus Blast to take out Umbreon. And he does not shield. And I'm thinking, what is going on right now? At this point, I decide to let Registeel go. My Toxicroak has a ton of stored energy, and we're in an equal shield situation. So I'm just thinking, if I go straight Mud Bombs with his Swampert this low, I just need, one more Mud Bomb to connect. And I think I can outspam him. So I throw this next Mud Bomb. I'm expecting a shield at this point, and I'm just thinking, there's no way he has 2 Hydro Cannons. And luckily for me, I'm able to get to that very last Mud Bomb. And that is able to get me my first win in my set against Ricky. Thank you for the matches, Ricky. It was interesting, that's for sure. It was a learning experience. It gave me a lot of different aspects to think about for my team that I didn't think about heading into this tournament. So thank you for the good games, and I'm looking forward to our Voyager Mega Tournament starting real soon. Good games, Ricky. Heading into the final round, I am up against OG Player 1. Similar to the last tournament, OG Player 1 is actually undefeated at this point, and after my last round loss, I totally did not expect to go against him for the final round. Also similar to the last tournament, I am sweating bullets at this point, and I'm just like, oh, not again. I gotta create a tie. How am I gonna pull this one off? Especially against a player such as OG Player 1. I had heard so many good things about him going into this tournament. That he was a super great player, that he was a great guy, and I'm just thinking, oh god, I'm gonna get demolished. Now, OG Player 1 has a very meta team with the exception of Rainy Castform. And so with a team like this that's so well-rounded, it's really hard to run the same line of 3 and have, solid coverage. It's very rock, paper, scissors-esque, and it's a matter of, who wins the lead and who has the best back supporting line. So unsure of what to run, I decided to run Toxicroak, Alola Marowak, and Azumarill in my first team, and you'll see here in a minute why that lineup did not work against his team. We head into game 1, and right off the bat, I lose the lead really bad. So I immediately switch out to my Alolan Marowak, hoping that he's slow to the switch, but of course, I get a few fast attacks off, but he sends in his Rainy Castform. At this point in the game, I just want to get as many Shadow Balls off as I possibly can before he, potentially throws a charge move. Luckily for me, he lets the Shadow Ball go through, and we CMP tie, but I know he's throwing a Weather Ball at this point. I know it's a losing matchup, so I decide just to let Alola Marowak go. At this point, I'm contemplating what I want to send out against his Rainy Castform, and I decide to send in my Toxicroak. Now, I wasn't entirely sure how much damage his Weather Ball would do against my Toxicroak, and I know he has Venusaur in the back, So I'm thinking, just let it go through, and unfortunately for me, it does a lot of damage against my Toxicroak. I know I need those shields for my Azumarill, but at the same time, you know, he has Altaria as his last pick, and I'm like, oh lordy, this is a bad situation for me. I get the Sludge Bomb off, he lets it go through, and at this point, it is a really, really bad losing situation for me. His Venusaur has stored energy. We're both at 2 shields, and he is just going to beat me to these Frenzy Plants, you know. He had the energy lead there. These Ice Beams, I need them to connect, but he is, you know, he's prepared to commit both of his shields to win this matchup, especially with my Toxicroak with such low HP in the back. Now, I commit all of my shields to this Azumarill matchup, but at this point, it is, ooh-wee. You know, I get this next Ice Beam off, but he still has a shield. There is just no coming out of this. I lost the lead. He had the switch in ready. He had the supporting line to support his team. You know, this Frenzy Plant is going to take me out, and my Toxicroak is just too low. And look at this switch at the end. He was totally ready for my line. He outplayed me really bad, and that was a GG's game 1. We head into game 3, and I decide I want to bring harder counters for his Rainy Castform and his Venusaur, so I bring Shiftry along with Registeel. Now right off the bat, I win the lead, and he sends out his Venusaur, and since I have Registeel in the back, I decide to farm a little bit and make sure that the Frenzy Plant lands on my Registeel. That way my Shiftry has a ton of stored energy, and my Registeel is in this winning matchup against his Venusaur. Now at this point, I don't really want to shield any of these Frenzy Plants. I like the idea of having a shield advantage, and so I'm just going to go straight Flash Cannon and see if he decides to commit any of his shields. I throw this first Flash Cannon, and he decides to let it go through. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not quite sure if I can farm this up. Ideally, I can farm this up and leave the matchup with a ton of stored energy. I know the Frenzy Plant is not going to take me out, but with how low it takes me, I have no choice but to send off this Flash Cannon. And at this point, he can either let it go through and let me have match control, or commit a shield, which he does, and at this point, he has match control. Now, I don't want to send out a Azumarill because if he has a Frenzy Plant ready, I'm going to have to commit a shield. So I decide to send out my Shiftry and throw a Leaf Blade. That way, I can just immediately knock out his Venusaur, maintain my 2 shield advantage, and still have a little bit of energy on my Shiftry. So I'm waiting for him to send out his next Pokemon, and he has Altaria in the back. So I decide to throw out my Foul Play. I don't expect a shield because this Foul Play, it's going to do a good chunk, but it's not going to, you know, it's not significant. And I decide to send out my Azumarill. And with a shield advantage, he comes out with his Rainy Castform, and I would say this is a mistake on my part. I should have gone straight Hydro Pump because these Ice Beams aren't going to do very much damage to his Rainy Castform whatsoever. And I realized that his Rainy Castform has Weather Ball as well as Thunder, and so I decided to commit a shield just to play it safe. Now he immediately throws another charge move, and I'm thinking there is no way he got enough energy for a Thunder and a Weather Ball. I don't need to shield. So at this point, I make the right call. I throw Hydro Pump, hoping I can just take out his Rainy Castform. But as you can see here in a second, he decided to shield. And so the switch is ready, so I decide to send out my Shiftry. And since I know Azumarill has such a good matchup against Altaria in the back, I want to commit my last shield to preserve my Shiftry for as long as possible. He immediately switches into Altaria, and I throw the Foul Play. And I'm not expecting a shield. And in this situation, my thought process is, this is great. Altaria is super low. I'm going to let Shiftry go. And I'm really hoping that I can take out his Altaria with Bubbles before he's able to get to another charge move and have a ton of energy to finish off the matchup. Now, it doesn't quite work out that way because he's able to get to one final Sky Attack. Now, I know I'll survive this, but I'm just thinking, how low am I going to be? And the answer is really low, but luckily for me, I'm able to leave this matchup with enough energy for a Hydro Pump. And even though Hydro Pump is going to be resisted by Rainy Castform, it's all it's going to take to finish off this game. And as you can see, that Hydro Pump was devastating. And that is a GG's for game 2. We head into the final game, and I make one final adjustment for the tiebreaker match. Now, I lead Hypno into his Alolan Marowak, and this is not a great situation for me, but I decide to switch in my Azumarill, hoping to catch a charge move, and he decides to stay in. Now, I should have realized at this point that his backline was not good against Azumarill and decided to commit shields, but instead I farm it up. You know, I'm gonna let the charge moves go through. He's letting me farm a ton of energy, and you'll see here in a second, he throws this Shadow Ball and I get to a Hydro Pump, but I'm not gonna throw the Hydro Pump to take him out. I'm throwing Ice Beam to take him out, and you couldn't see it, but he switched in his Altaria and committed a shield. So at this point, I have enough energy to get to 2 Ice Beams, and his options are to either commit both shields or get Altaria super duper low, and he opts to let Altaria tank the Ice Beam, and I'm like, okay, this is a really good situation. Altaria is really, really low. I have Registeel in the back, and I know that with Registeel, he can tank any of these, you know, he can tank all of these sky attacks, and Altaria is just low enough where if I aggressively farm him, I'm going to leave the matchup with around 100 energy. I might have overfarmed just a little bit because of how fast Registeel built up energy. But my goal is to leave this matchup with as much energy as possible. I tank those sky attacks, and my Registeel is ready for whatever he sends out. Now at this point, he sends out his Alolan Marowak. I throw this Flash Cannon to take it out, and I'm thinking, please just let it go through. Please just let it go through. He commits his last shield, so I'm like, oh god. Let me send out my Hypno. And I should have realized, based on how much energy he had, that he wouldn't have a Shadow Ball, but I was really nervous that he would, so I decided to shield, and it was just a Bone Club. And at this point, he sends out his last Pokemon, and it's Bastiodon, and I'm like, oh, dang it. This is not a good situation for me. So I have a bunch of energy on Hypno, and I want to go straight Shadow Ball at this point. I want to get as much damage, you know, on this Bastiodon as humanly possible before Hypno faints. So I'm going straight Shadow Ball, and at this point I'm really low, he's really low. I'm like, okay, I don't know if he's gonna throw, but let me throw this Thunder Punch just to get him as low as possible before he throws a charge move. So I throw the Thunder Punch, he lets it go through, and it was a CMP tie, so he threw a charge move as well, and I'm like, okay, I have 1 shield and a really, really low HP Registeel. Let me save the shield. Now these Smackdowns aren't doing a ton of damage, and he gets to 1 final charge move, and I'm like, okay, good thing I saved that last shield. I commit the shield here, and he still has a Alolan Marowak, so at this point he switches in his Alolan Marowak. I throw the Flash Cannon to take him out, and I'm thinking, oh no, I can't get to another Flash Cannon. So now it's a question of who's going to win this fast move beatdown, and Lock-On is able to take him out with me having less than 5 HP left for a GG's in the final round, and that was crazy close, insane, really good set. GG's OG player won for a really intense final round. It was a good tournament, and that was a crazy way to end it. Let me tell you, I did not think I was going to win. I thought those Smackdowns were going to finish me off, but no. Lockdown was able to beat him down somehow, and that is a GG's for the finals. Thank you guys for making it through the video. I realized that even with trying to keep things a little bit faster paced, it was still a very long video, especially for just 5 rounds. With each new tournament coverage video, I'll be adjusting my video style so that I'm continually working towards developing my own unique style that makes me stand out from the rest of the content creators out there. Now, whether you're a viewer or a content creator yourself, I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below on what adjustments I could be making for my videos. For this tournament, I want to give one last thank you to Arkansas PVP for hosting, for Ricky for giving me some interesting spice and throwing the little pancake fish at me so that I could learn how to play against him, and also to OG Player 1 for that crazy final round. I did not think I was going to win, and it was a really tight set of matches. GG's. With this month being regionals, I definitely plan on doing a tournament coverage video on my regionals run, in addition to the Arkansas PVP Mega Voyager Cup that's starting in a few days. Now, depending on how quickly I get used to making videos and putting them out quickly, I'm hoping I can put out at least 1 or 2 additional Voyager Cups in addition to those 2 cups I definitely plan on doing coverage for. That's all I have for you guys today. Like I said, drop me a comment if you have any suggestions for future videos or how I can edit my content. And, well, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!